Welcome to Around the NFL, presented by Verizon.
The Around the NFL podcast. Stay away from my wife, Mark.
From the Chris Wessling podcast studio, New Year's Eve party that went sideways with Zumwalt and Sessler. I don't know.
I think he's referring to someone else and their wife that like you, namely. That came from you.
No.
Yes, it did months
I had
ago.
nothing to do with it. I'm Dan Hanzus, and I got heroes here. Wow. Scandal to start the show. Colleen, Wolfe, Gregg, Rosenthal, Marc Sessler. What's up? Oh.
Hey.
Hi.
You know what? This is like sage right now. I'm going to sage the top of the show here because I feel like that was maybe the wrong way to start things with Marc, for sure.
Sure. That was off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, so here, everyone
It seemed
settle
pointed,
in.
though. It didn't seem vague. It was directed directly at Marc. It was a warning.
Do you know anything about this, Justin? The story behind the Zummy drop?
The Zum drops are usually inside jokes referencing something that happened on the show 5 months ago. So
It happened on the show, and it was words from you to me.
Oh, it was?
Yes.
Oh, so it wasn't a premeditated, here, use this. It was just something that was culled
It has nothing to
from
do
a
with
prior
this.
show.
Right. He is, yeah.
It has nothing to do with Jason's wife and you.
No.
Good.
I
Now
don't know
everything's
how
clear.
else to clarify
the
that it
sage
is.
didn't work.
Do it again.
Bring that song back.
Like most jokes, it's good to discuss what it really
Right,
meant for like
really
a minute
gotta-
afterwards.
You need the autopsy.
Yeah.
All right.
Humor
Here it
coach
is.
Gregg Rosenthal chiming in.
That's right.
A showman, a growing showman.
Yeah.
Gregg Rosenthal.
Growman.
A Growman. Remember, in the offseason, there will be, did we decide what was the name of it?
The Showman's Show, man.
Oh, the Showman.
Showman's Show, comma, man. Yeah.
Where it will just be a dissertation. Greg in the audience, Marc and I teaching him the glories
I can't wait for that.
performance. Speaking of being a showman, Greg is going to have a stage to work on his craft because that live show that we're doing, the ATN Homecoming show from the Bourbon Room in Hollywood, it's sold out.
What?
So, I, like a Taylor Swift concert, go flood the secondary market, see if you can find a ticket for a few $1,000 to try to get in the door, but you can no longer buy tickets because we sold the bastard out. And I just want to thank everyone who has supported us along the way. This is going to be a lot of fun in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I walked by it the other day, and someone was, it's up on Hollywood Boulevard, those like iron gates to close it so it doesn't get broken into at night. But he was opening it, and I just said, can I take a picture of it? It's got a neon sign. And he said, well, wait, who are you? And I explained, like, I'm part of this nerdy football show that's broadcast. He's like, oh, the show's sold out. He's like, come on and take a look. I took a look at the venue.
Nice.
Beautiful, beautiful venue.
I can't wait to tailgate. There's a big tailgate before, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
So much going on. So that's happening next week. Of course, it's also New Horizons week in the NFL. A little bit weird, Greggy. We're so used to doing this. There's always, 6 to 8 coaching changes, it seems, every year. And, of course, not all these guys are out of the woods, but we knew Frank Reich and Matt Rule were gone. Jeff Saturday and Wilkes, interim coach. We'll see what their futures are. Cliff Kingsbury was let go officially on Monday. Lovie Smith as well. So we're just at 4 right now. Is this the calm before the storm, or is this an outlier year? Interesting in terms of maybe.
Is it only 4? For some reason, I thought
Am
it
I
was
missing
5.
somebody?
I don't know.
it
Did
is
you mention
only
the
4.
Broncos?
Oh, I missed the Broncos.
Yeah.
Son of a.
So I think there'll be one more.
So
I
that's
don't know.
5.
It's 5.
I don't know what that one will be.
Rosberg.
We'll get to Sean McVay. That one's hanging out there. I think some of these playoff teams, if Mike McCarthy doesn't win, I
an
think
eye on
he's
that.
out. I think he's out based on
Spicy.
Jerry Jones's preseason comments that we need to advance in the playoffs.
Jared's known to, with the wind, change certain opinions. But, yes, especially with another Sean out there potentially. Anyway, so much to get to. So we'll even as this episode goes on, you never know. We could get some breaking news on another change at the top of a head coach or a coaching staff org chart. But while we wait for that, let's go through all the kind of news out. There's a big news-heavy show here as we get you caught up. Thank you if you made it through the 17-hour Week 18 recap of Around the NFL.
What a marathon.
Yeah, before I did my Good Morning Football hit with Kyle Brandt this morning, just making chit-chat. Kyle said something like, yeah, man, a pretty long podcast on Sunday. I was
Well, I
like,
appreciate him listening.
well, Maybe you listen. Maybe you just saw a tweet of somebody saying the show is too long now. I don't know. We're going to try to shorten this one, but we're off to a great start 5 minutes in. Let's do a whole bunch of news.
Don't let these tears fool you. There's all dog around this mug.
Yeah! I don't want to let go of the Lions, and certainly don't want to let go of Jamal Williams, Connie, our friend.
Oh, I love him.
We talked about it on the Power Rankings podcast today, Connie, that Jamal Williams, who was really a Hard Knocks favorite on our podcast, he ended up scoring 18 touchdowns and breaking Barry Sanders' record and then giving the post-game interview of the year. Beautiful.
It was the biggest plot twist interview that I've ever listened to because it was definitely leading me down one road, and then all of a sudden it was just a straight U-turn to somewhere else in the other direction. So I really enjoyed it. I think
a range of emotions. Now that's a showman. I mean, I thought he knew exactly what to do in the moment there.
He's born with it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into what's
Gregg
going on.
could learn a thing or two from him.
Ouch. Get the sage out again. What?
Showman.
Yes, Cliff Kingsbury, one of the dismissed coaches, Arizona Cardinals. Also, Steve Keim is out. We know Keim's got some things going on, and in concert with the announcement that they had – oh, right, they did the Hard Knocks as well. Cliff out. They also said Keim is stepping aside. So Keim's out. They're blowing up the whole thing. And we learned that Kyler Murray, the quarterback who's rehabbing his own knee injury, and that's a storyline around this team. The owner of the team, Mr. Michael Bidwell, had this to say about how Kyler Murray factors in.
We're in communication, and we should be talking later today. We texted and either today or tomorrow, and so absolutely want to get the input of our leaders, including Kyler, and have spoken with a number of leaders already.
Makes sense. I mean, that should always, especially after you get into business at that level with the quarterback, Greg. I don't know how much you power you give him in the room, but you want his voice to be heard.
Yeah, it's not going to be that much. But the point of getting a new coach is to maximize Kyler Murray. That's the biggest point. I mean, you have to be able to run the entire organization, something I'm not sure like Cliff Kingsbury was incredibly strong at. And I don't know if he was incredibly strong at schematically creating an advantage for Kyler Murray. And so that's why you see Cliff Kingsbury get let go. I did like him personally more after watching this Hard Knocks, and I did watch a decent amount. I think he was a good
Kyler.
guy. Both of them.
Oh, okay.
But I meant Cliff.
Oh, Cliff.
I think Cliff's a good person trying his best, and it just wasn't going to happen for him. Like, this was not the job for him. It was maybe in a little over his head, but he was doing his best, trying his best, like, believed in his players. I think he was well liked. Like, that wasn't all the problem. Everyone getting really carried away with them spending all the money on that extension. At the time, we killed that extension. We said this is a ridiculous extension to be extending Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury through 2027. But it's not my money. It didn't matter in the end. The extension had no difference. If he had added 1 year or 5 years, it's the exact same to Cardinals fans. So I'm glad they did that. And when you really think about the money involved here, people are like, oh, they're cheap and they don't want to spend all that money. I get that, but you spend more on like one season of Kelvin Beachum than you do on 5 seasons or around the same of Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim. So in the scheme of things,
I think it's the money's part of it, and you're right. Like, if you're a fan of the team, like, it doesn't affect your salary cap at all, and if your owner's willing to make this change, it shows you that he doesn't care about the money side. If he wants to get it right, that's to their credit. But their discredit was, as we critiqued, to your point, Greg, just the fact that they saw enough in Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim a year ago to say these guys definitely need an extension coming off a playoff wipeout against the Rams. I could say this for Kingsbury. He was in a tough spot this year. They used a franchise record 81 players. They were the 4th most injured team in the league. You didn't have DeAndre Hopkins for a big chunk of the year. You lost Kyler Murray for the back end of the year. You used 4 quarterbacks in 4 games in a row at one point. That's enough to get a coach into hot water and fire. But that also has nothing to do with why Cliff Kingsbury is gone.
And yet, does anyone feel that the Cardinals are making a mistake here moving at this
No,
point.
this whole season was a disaster before it even started, with Kyler Murray scrubbing any evidence of the Cardinals from his Instagram, and then obviously the contract stuff that happened, and then all of the off-field drama moved onto the field when you had Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury screaming at each other on the TNF game, and Kyler was telling him to calm down, and DeAndre Hopkins had to kind of like take him away and move him out of that like whole situation. But Cliff was brought in initially
for Kyler Murray.
And obviously that didn't work out, and you want to have Kyler Murray's input, but I don't know, like, it just seems like the same mistake will happen again. And they need to bring in a coach that's going to not only get along with Kyler Murray, but also get along with Michael Bidwell, because he's really proactive.
Yeah. Well, and just have a better sense of who is a good offensive coach. Because there was a lot of people who did not believe Cliff Kingsbury was a good schematic offensive coach. And that's the thing that struck me, was like people talking about, maybe the Patriots are going to hire him. Maybe he'll go with the Rams if McVay stick around. It's like, I think the Cardinals' offense was defined by its lack of ability to adapt over the last 4 years. They were one of the easiest offenses to attack.
But before it happened, it was because Kingsbury and Kyler Murray had known each other forever.
Sure. But I don't think it was a personal thing. I think it was more like, this guy will maximize Kyler as a player, and obviously.
But Keim didn't do him any favors with the way that the roster was set up, because there were key positions. I mean, the roster has no depth in general, but then the offensive line, you look at what they have coming up in terms of free agents. I think 4 of their 5 starters are free agents. They got to figure out what they're going to do with Zach Allen and Byron Murphy. There's just a lot that needs to be done.
And they are hiring a GM before the coach, so we'll see.
The idea of Cliff always seemed like it was something that the Cardinals liked. He fit the profile of a guy that was leading the team. He's a young, confident dude. Remember the shot on draft day of him?
Iconic.
Like in his beautiful den or whatever, with his feet up on the table.
And that still I think was pretty cool.
Desert behind him. Like there was an image of like what this guy brought to the team, but then a reality of maybe he wasn't really what they hoped he was going to be, so they start over.
And the Keim thing, I'm expecting more to the story to come out at some point. If anyone cares to...
I don't really need to.
I don't need to, but I just mean there will be lawsuits is what I'm expecting.
Oh.
It just seems like whatever was going down with him, that he had to leave the team in the middle of the season.
What a mess.
It's a mess.
He seems like a guy that's dealing with some personal things.
He'd been there since 1999. And he'd been through stuff before, and we'll see.
Had the public DUI, and close with the Bidwells. I would be a little concerned. Like, Bidwell said, he'd rather hire the GM, but that wouldn't get in the way if like the timing didn't work out. And so it's just Bidwell hiring these coaches. It had been Keim essentially in the past, and I do think it's a logical place for Sean Payton. If I'm Sean Payton, the organization maybe is a bit of a concern, but the Kyler Murray factor would be intriguing.
In other new horizons, we head to Nashville. New horizons. New horizons. The Titans fired 4 assistant coaches on Monday, including offensive coordinator Todd Downing, who had been in that position for the past 2 seasons. They also fired their offensive line coach, Keith Carter, secondary coach Anthony Midget, and offensive skills assistant Eric Frazier. Hey, first of all, did I get the last name right there?
Yeah,
it's Tony
Midget. It's Tony Midget.
Okay. Gravedigger. You okay with this? Is Downing an unfair fall guy, or was it time to mix things up? And is this just the beginning? Because they could save $18 million, I believe, on their cap by moving on from your boy Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Titans' offense was the Titans were the only team in the NFL this season to fail to score 30 points in a single game, and they never topped 28 points in a single game. So, yeah, the offensive line was banged up. They played with multiple quarterbacks. Receivers aren't good. But the offense got noticeably worse after Art Smith left to become the Falcons' head coach. Todd Downing had 2 years to show that he could be, a good NFL play caller, and I don't think he was ever above average. If anything, he was below average or bad. So I think it was the right move for the Titans' direction here.
Having a bad offensive line every single season is coaching.
Yeah, and that's why Keith Carter...
It's not about personnel, and that's the coordinator. But there's a lot on Vrabel. He is risking becoming a little Bill O'Brien-like here because he got the GM fired. I'm just going to assume that he was involved in that decision. Mm-hmm. And they didn't win a game after that. It's worth saying. They did that in the middle of the season. Not like the GM is doing a lot in the middle of the season to create wins and losses, but just interesting. And then now he's going to be hiring the new coach. It's just a lot.
Well, if he got him fired, part of it was the GM decided to trade A.J. Brown, which completely sabotaged their entire offense. They had the worst wide receiver crew league-wide, and it showed for the not scoring 30 points. I think we talked about Vrabel on draft night when they traded A.J. Brown, and his visceral and body language and everything was just like, no, don't do this. And
I mean, think about the dominoes.
Them.
And, of course, the injuries are a big part of the story with the Titans on offense. But the dominoes, starting with that decision, how that impacted the quarterback play, how it impacted, obviously, their wide receiver and playmaking ability, how that hurt the offensive coordinator's ability to enact a scheme. All this stuff is kind of connected. Sometimes one decision
It's so many dominoes.
Catastrophic
and you
for an
have
organization.
so many new pieces now coming in this season. And I guess it's a good thing considering how the season went. But, when Graver's talking about the way that they didn't score any points, 30th in yards per game. Second half of games also just really stood out to me because their second half adjustments were we're just not going to show up or score any points.
Yeah,
I don't know what that was.
They had the worst second half point differential of any team in the league. And to your point, Colleen, it never got better. They were bad in week 1 and they were just as bad in week 18. So,
well, after years of over or under indexing on this show and Dan calling in terms of how much we talked about the Titans and Dan calling them the Titans for years.
Really got certain people upset.
I think we've over-indexed now with Graver here, and we are now taking a break. It's going to be a month.
Did you just break up with the Titans?
Do we want to fire the Titans in the sun for a little bit?
I'm just saying we're going to take a break.
I don't know. Don't we want to cover who they hire as their new general manager at some point when it happens?
That's a possibility, but it's not in the
We'll
central.
cover it in a minimalist way.
At least mention it.
And we'll keep moving.
I will say, since I became their fan at one point during the autumn,
they didn't win a game.
They went 0-7 and turned into an absolute raging, fiery nightmare.
And just for any listeners that might be curious, this new arrangement with the Titans for the time being, it will not carry over to other teams like the New York Jets. But the Titans specifically, much less
fresh target
conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, just for the time
I just
being.
need a break. That's all.
In other new horizons, we head to the Cleveland Browns, where Joe Woods. In other new horizons, we head to the New Horizons.
I think that sage snowed under our musical director.
That's, in the industry parlance, that's the cue when you hear horizons.
Got it.
Going forward.
We need a live harp.
And the last 5 years of the show. The Browns fired defensive coordinator Joe Woods on Sunday night after back-to-back losing seasons. Mark, I'll tee you up on this one. They did improve as the season went along, but this team, you could say, underachieved defensively, especially terrible against the run, which was a major problem for them. So they are rebooting leadership on that side of the ball in Cleveland.
They went into the year really short on the interior defensive line. And so the run thing, that's part of it. They were in the mid-20s in DVOA for most of the season. They did tighten up since week 13, played some good games, and were kind of closer to 12, 13. But Joe Woods always felt like the obvious fall guy here because it's Stefanski's surviving because you didn't have your quarterback for much of the season, X, Y, and Z. I'm not convinced Stefanski's the guy for Deshaun Watson on any level, that they fit together. But Woods is your scapegoat here, taken out of the schoolbook depository and on the breadline now. But I will say this. I'm watching a team waste Myles Garrett's career. You got to find the right guy. They are looking at Brian Flores, Jared Mayo, Sean Desai. There's guys out there that could.
Brian Flores would be a great hire.
Brian Flores would be great. But there's skill. There's good players here. They were not used correctly this past season at all.
Jadeveon Clowney believes that. That was
he's
something
gone.
I know he's probably not coming back.
I don't think
he made it clear.
I would say he is not coming back.
He's definitely out when they
He left the door open
suspended
for
him.
a return.
I think he turned Jared. He even turned Myles Garrett against him with what he did. It's just
Well, there were so many. That thing that really struck me was how many players came out and very openly talked about how they needed a fresh start. Greg Newsome talked about they maybe needed to keep things more vanilla on defense, and that Joe did a great job in the second half of the year just realizing, you know what, maybe we don't need to call everything. Let's just shorten the menu down. And then John Johnson said, I don't even like talking about scheme too much. He said that I think you're getting your players to play. That's the main thing. That's what I want. So that's like a more of a motivation thing. And we talk about, Mark, to your point about the defense getting better in the second half, they also, their pass defense definitely did, but they faced quarterbacks like Kyle Allen, Tyler Huntley, Andy Dalton, Carson Wentz, Kenny Pickett, who's been doing better, but it wasn't like powerhouse quarterbacks.
Not a lineup, yeah.
Didn't get to face the worst quarterback in the division on their own roster, though. You know?
Oh, we got him!
Andrew Berry, I thought the biggest takeaway from this was how they're keeping Stefanski, and that they were pretty forthright in that, saying, like, we know we've got a good one in Kevin Stefanski. We're going to keep him. But great head coaches get involved with the defense, and I think some of the reporting is that Stefanski kind of was just like, oh, the defense is yours, Joe Woods. He made that hire of Joe Woods.
Did you think there was a chance that Stefanski was going to go?
No, but with all these teams, you never think, like, when there's a surprise firing, you don't always see it coming. So he was sort of on the long list of, like, would that be that crazy because of what you're saying with Watson? But they have bought into the Watson and him being a pair. And Stefanski, if you do want to be a great head coach, you need to be better at hiring your defensive coordinator, and you need to, like, figure out how to help that side of the ball.
Don't you look at, like, the Stefanskis and, like, the Dennis Allens of the world and be like, here's the problem if you keep these guys. Like, they're fresh new fall guys, like, come week 14 next season to be let go because nothing is going right. And then you're taking your team with no quarterback, the Saints, or the Deshaun Watson situation, and putting it into a third developmental or second developmental year.
I like Stefanski, though. I think they should see it through and see if he can get Watson to work. And if it doesn't happen, it won't happen.
You'll like this. I got this text screen grab on my fantasy football thread from my buddy Elliot. Headline from the Akron Beacon Journal. Deshaun Watson wants, quote, man-to-man conversation with Browns coach Kevin Stefanski on plan. Deshaun Watson, who hasn't had a man-to-man conversation with anyone for 2 years.
Right.
Now he wants to dictate the direction of this franchise.
Who was a hot mess on the field.
Which, by the way, he can because ownership gave him $300 million or whatever it was guaranteed. Woo! Woo! Elliot added the addendum. This is insane on so many levels.
Your friend is all over this.
He's sharp on it. Shout out, Eli. All right, we're back. Here we go. We roll on. New Horizons week here.
It's getting better.
Getting better. I wouldn't say it's solved. Who's safe? Who's safe right now?
Stefanski. There's one.
Stefanski.
Mm-hmm.
He's safe.
Seems like Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas seems safe. Dennis Allen seems safe, but I wrote about this in the power rankings. This is a bit of a trope of this time of year, almost specific to this day and Monday after the season. When the coach has the press conference, and I want to make sure I give you the exact quote, although it is a very similar quote. When Dennis Allen is asked about his job status after his first year with the Saints, whether he has a job, whether he's going to be the head coach, and his reply was, I don't think there's any need to discuss that any further. And I'm certainly going forward with that anticipation. That's the indication that I've been given, and I'm excited about it. Always seems like a weird, unnecessary situation. And I understand it's the timing also. Maybe the team's not sure what they want to do yet. But when you send your head coach out for that end-of-season press conference the day after the final game of the year, and he doesn't actually have it on, like, 100% authority that he's coming back, so he says that thing like, no one's told me I'm not coming back, so I'm just assuming I am. It always feels like a bit of a tough sitch, put it that way, for the old HC, and in this case, Dennis Allen.
Agree. Like, McVay put himself in a different situation. We get to that later, but he also didn't seem to have his own clarity. I watched the Dennis Allen press conference for some reason because I just thought it might be awkward. And
Did it deliver?
He didn't say anything. He just didn't answer any questions. It's sort of...
He's in limbo. It seemed like he's.
But it wasn't about his job. I'm saying, like, about the team and what they're going to do and different things. And he just sort of, like, refused to say anything meaningful.
But do you think that might be connected to maybe not knowing if he is part of the future?
Yeah, he tried to nip that in the bud, and you read the quote right away, like, stop asking me about this. Essentially right away.
Stop asking me if I'm fired.
It really seems.
I don't know.
It really seems like he's safe because the whole Sean Payton idea seems to have come and gone in terms of Sean Payton potentially coming back. That doesn't seem like it's at all in the cards.
All right. In other news, Sean McVay, of course, the Super Bowl winning coach of the Rams. Big story going into Week 18 that he might step away from the sidelines, at least temporarily. He spoke to the media on Monday, and this is what he had to say about his uncertain future.
I don't get the sense in the least bit I'm done coaching. All right. It's just a matter of what does that look like as it relates to the immediate future. I think what I'd like to do is be able to take the appropriate time. Never gone through anything like this, but you want to make sure that you're considerate of the people that are affected. That's the most important thing, and that's probably, you want to be able to, the consistent conversations and dialogues that have existed with the people that I love and really care about. Hey, do what you think is best for you and Veronica. But that doesn't mean it takes away the empathy, the level of responsibility that I do feel for the people that would be affected, as it relates to my decision moving forward. And so those are the things that you don't take lightly.
And we learned that he has let his coaches, his assistants, know that it's cool to look for outside work, which seems like another indication McVay.
That was from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. Yeah, that like
Done.
If you wanted to take another job, and our friend Jordan Rodriguez added some context that there would have been a lot of changes to the staff anyways. We already knew the offensive coordinator was leaving. That was a month ago. I think that was more of he wasn't going to be brought back and found a job situation, and I think there could be more.
Raheem Morris is a notable guy on that staff there, DC.
Like, for it to get to this point, whatever Sean McVay is going through mentally has to be really, really taxing for him to just come out and be like, this is like nothing I've ever experienced. Hey, staff, go ahead. Like, look for other jobs. Don't stay here because of me, because I don't even know what I'm going to do. I mean, that, especially in this NFL right now, in this time, like when you see guys getting hired and fired and all of the success that he's experienced from the jump with the Rams, I just think that there's much more that we don't know about what he's going through. And I bet that everything has been really hard on him this year. Like, the expectations were really high. And I know you guys were talking about this the other day on the pod, just about, like, he just got married. And I honestly can't imagine, like, having an in-laws family going through a war-torn situation. Like, that is... I understand, like, you have your work life and your personal life, but a lot of times those things have to be in the same scope. Like, you're still just a human being dealing with other human beings. And, like, I think he has to take whatever time he needs to step away. But it is kind of weird because we don't hear it all the time for a coach to say, I need this.
Yeah, I think it's countercultural, and it's he's a younger coach, obviously. A lot of the guys, like the Cliff Kingsburys, were hired because of the Sean McVay effect. You go find this young guy that is so driven and so resourceful, and he's a brainiac and a wizard, and he's going to change your offense. But Sean McVay always took so much on. Like, I'll just never think, we talked about something, that feature that came out before the season, just the weight. I remember being at the Combine after they lost that Super Bowl to the Patriots. And Sean McVay was up on stage, the Diaz, in that big room, talking to Good Morning Football early before a bunch of press showed up. And there was just this sort of weight to his entire demeanor. Like, that Super Bowl weighed so heavily on him. And I think it's such a release after they won one, but then now you're right back in the thick of it in an organization that maybe if you're thinking personally, like, I'm at this place where I'm at this crossroads and need to make a countercultural move and go treat my family situation, my mental health, all that stuff before football, which is different than the old school coaches that just, like, burn through this, never around their families. They sleep at the facility. They're there 80 weeks, even if they only need to be there 54. McVay is not from necessarily that world, and he's telling us that. I think he's saying, like, coaching isn't over. Immediate coaching might be. He's also being courted left and right by television. And I just think, like, I guess from a Rams angle, too, he's done so much for him that you'd be like, we want you to do what you want to do. But do you really, if you're a player, and this is not against Sean McVay, because there's no doubt that he's all in, like, do you want to coach every January, taking press conferences, whether or not you still want to do this? It's like, that coach needs to be the anchor. So if he's not able to be the anchor for whatever reason, float away for a bit, and maybe we see you again.
Well, I think, the one thing that was difficult about what he said was he'd never been through anything like this before, and that's true in terms of this season. but he was going through something exactly like this a year ago at this time. He considered leaving the job.
Right, it's 2 years in a row. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
It's like we're getting this, year after year.
So that I agree that you can't be in that spot and put your team in that spot year after year. And he's very conscious of that, and you could hear him speaking to that, and it makes you think that he will go away, but it's hard to guess. And I think Jordan, our friend I'll mention again, like hit on, I think, a key point here. You said like there had been this sprint from him basically his whole football life since he was like John Gruden's mentee almost 15 years ago of like getting to the mountaintop, becoming the best coach in the league, getting everything, winning the Super Bowl. And you hear this from a lot of people who have experienced a lot of success in their lives, and they realize when they get to the top and they achieved everything they ever wanted to, that actually isn't that satisfying, that it's not that fulfilling. It is in the moment, but it's not going to change who you are in the long term, and that whatever he wants to do, like that alone isn't going to make everything okay. I don't know. I think we've probably seen the last of him for the Rams right now.
It seemed like does the Super Bowl, winning a Super Bowl, galvanize you to win 5 more, or was it more of a relief? And it just felt like it was just more of a relief to Sean McVay at times than like, I want to do this for 30 more years. Don't ask it again.
Like, think about when we reached the end of the season.
Oh,
and
man,
like
just put me on the bus.
The burnout that sometimes we feel. I can't imagine being a head coach and knowing that they are, the amount of work that they are pouring in, the hours, everything. That burnout must be next level.
Stafford says he's coming back regardless, by the way. Whether McVay's here or not, he's playing football.
And I'm sure that Sean McVay is sincere about the passion he has for the job and the idea of burnout, but I'm not ruling out the possibility that it takes a ton of money to work for Fox for a year and then signs a huge new deal with a different team in a much better place.
Like we're watching Sean Payton potentially
right.
do exactly
I think
that.
the year off is pretty massive.
Think of Bill Parcells did that back in the day.
I'm not trying to be cynical about it,
yeah.
but like it could be like this is all too much for him, his personality type, or it could be he thinks it's time for a reset as well.
It's sort of like players retiring and then like all of a sudden coming back and playing for a different team.
Right. Well, the guy who he learned from, John Gruden,
right,
did the exact same thing essentially. And I always remember this article by Bill Belichick. For some reason, Bill Belichick wrote a column in the New York Times after John Gruden won the Super Bowl, and it was kind of like, all right, what's next? Like your life just changed so much, and you're going to have all this thing happen, and then at some point you're going to realize like, oh, I'm just back to being the same coach I was before. And I was reminded of it with Jordan's article this week.
Speaking of Bill Belichick, he will be coming back for his 24th season on the sideline with the Patriots. And he's the perfect example. Like, everyone's wired differently. I'm sure McVay lives and dies in every single way with his team, but don't tell me Bill Belichick doesn't either. I mean, here he is now,
Pete Carroll
in his 50th season on the sideline in various capacities. He can't get enough, as he's I think 73 years old now, Belichick. He's coming back, but he also acknowledged that the future for the Patriots, things have to change. Here's what Bill had to say.
As we do every year, evaluate everything and try to make the best decisions that we can to move forward, to be more competitive, to have a stronger team in the future. And so Robert and I will talk about that as a staff, and certainly individual conversations with many of the players, as we always do. Well, all the players, but there's some that are obviously more
this is terrible.
urgent or will be more timely than others.
He's the best. He is 70, by the way.
I just want to run through a wall.
He's choosing his words carefully.
Did you watch the game on Monday?
I wish I had asked for it. This would have been better showmanship here.
Right. You mean when you were yelling at our producer behind the glass before the show for having too much?
True. That is not
too
true.
much sound?
Never would yell. Never would.
Never.
No, you didn't raise your voice.
Yes,
not
producer.
True. That is now
you
you're
didn't.
making things up.
I said you didn't raise your voice.
Oh, didn't raise my voice. Tom Curran was like, Tom Curran, who's been there forever, came out with it and said, well, a lot of us thought it was dubious when you hired Matt Patricia. It just said the word dubious. And then you didn't really, and let Belichick answer it. Let Belichick answer it. And he gave his Belichick answer of like, I was just doing what I thought was best for the team. And then Tom responded by being like, yeah, but like when we think you do things that are dubious, you don't ever give us like an answer. So we just have to just sort of say it, and then it sits there. And at that moment, Belichick actually started smiling and laughing. And then Curran was like, this is not really a question, it's more of a statement. And then Bill was just like, thank you, Tom.
Nick Caserio could step away, if a new head coach chooses that as the more righteous path for the organization.
Sure, yes.
Interesting. The team also has requests out to Jonathan Gannon, Avero, D'Amico Ryans, DC of the Niners, Shane Steichen, and Ben Johnson, OC of the Lions. So casting a wide net as they look to replace Lovie Smith, who was fired on Sunday. The Broncos, by the way, also a team looking to replace a head coach. They have scheduled interviews with Dan Quinn, the Cowboys DC, or a request, not a schedule. They got to be granted. Request to interview Dan Quinn, D'Amico Ryans, and Morris. Who we got? Morris.
Raheem Morris.
Yes,
and
of
they
the
also,
Rams,
they interviewed,
who will get that request granted.
They also did interview Ajiro Evero, their own defensive coordinator.
All right, so they want a defensive guy.
The Panthers, while we're here, Panthers are talking to Jim Caldwell, Ken Dorsey, Shane Steichen, Ben Johnson, Frank Reich, Steve Wilkes, Mike Kafka?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. And speaking of the Panthers, there has been a lot of speculation about Steve Wilkes and whether he did enough to earn the job. I didn't get the vibe listening to Fitterer that that's really going to be an option. I know Wilkes is formally interviewed or is scheduled to this week for the job. But here's Fitterer talking about how he sees the Panthers' job as very, very, savory. Tasty. It's a tasty gig.
It's a young team. This division is up for grabs here the next few years. There's no dominant quarterback. They look at our defense. They look at the offensive line, some of the pieces that we have, and the way we're growing right now. And with a few tweaks here and there, this is a division that we can take over.
Wait.
That opportunity is there. It's up to us to do it.
But no dominant quarterback, including on your roster. That's been the problem. And Scott Fitterer has not solved that. It's not just a small tweak to find a dominant quarterback, by the way.
Unless he knows something we don't know, I guess Tom Brady is either no longer a dominant quarterback or he'll be in Vegas in a couple of months.
Well, I think
well, he's probably right about that.
Yeah, I think he probably won't be on the Bucs.
But maybe he knows.
He's definitely not dominant this year. I really was surprised that Wilkes, I agree with you, doesn't seem like he's getting a great chance here just because he did so well and I think did a lot of the hard things about being a head coach. And the reporting is he has a pretty concrete plan of what he would do in terms of hiring an offensive coordinator. So if Steve Wilkes shows up with a great offensive plan in terms of who his coach would be, that would be attractive to me. But everyone else they're interviewing is essentially a defensive guy.
He had
offensive
this
guy.
Audition this year was pretty great for him, though, considering the way that the offense looked before he took over and the team in general. And then afterwards, they had a single-game record for total yards, 570. They had a single-game record for rushing yards. They were the NFL's most efficient passing attack for 6 weeks. No one thought that they were going to be able to do anything on offense, especially after trading Christian McCaffrey. And then all of a sudden they were able to run the ball really well. I know that he's a defensive coach, but the team in general looked a lot better under him. It looked like it had life.
If they would have beat the Bucs in Week 17, there's a good chance he keeps the job.
That's possible.
It's a results-oriented business. I think Wilkes did a great job, but also sometimes you got to win that game.
I don't know. I'd point to I think it's a hazard sign for coaches. Don't take these interim jobs because Rich Bisaccia a year ago did go to the playoffs in a whirlwind of turmoil and with a team that was vaguely suspect to begin with. Did a great job, goes and doesn't really get a shot to get that job because.
At the time of his life, though, there is something to that.
But I'm not, that time of his life is great. But it's like if you think that it's a pathway to get the head coaching job, what more could Steve Wilkes have done here? That team was a hot disaster, and he totally turned them around. They beat up on teams, showed a lot. The players responded, and you're not really getting a fair shake here.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to the Texans quickly because the Caserio part of it was very strange to me. He was sitting up there knowing that he needed to take responsibility, that he hadn't done a good job. He'll be the first GM in NFL history to ever get a chance to hire a third head coach after hiring 2 straight one-and-dones. Of course, that's never happened before. Like, where the Texans are now are as dysfunctional as in that way of, like, turning over head coaches as any team in NFL history right now. And those were his choices. And he even said, well, admittedly, I will let other people be more involved in this head coaching search, like the McNairs, but I don't think it's a choice. And then he also kept saying, like, if the new coach chooses, I guess, and doesn't want me here, I'd have to work with him. I could step away. It's like, what is he doing up there on the podium then?
That sounds like a disaster.
It sounded like he didn't necessarily know, kind of like these coaches, what his status is going to be. So I took from that, look, if they hired a big name, but it doesn't seem like they're going for one, then they could get rid of Nick Caserio. But they're going for assistants around the league. And there was a report, too, that D'Amico Ryans might not even want to interview with them after, how they've treated the 2 last black head coaches that they hired and pretty much got rid of quickly.
I know it's always like, just take the open job. Someone's going to take it. It's like, I'd be really careful about some of these openings.
And
that one especially.
Such a shame, too, because the opportunity there with 2 first-round draft picks this year and next year for whoever is coming in, like, it looks great. But then you realize it's the Texans, and their track record recently is abysmal.
What's the record, by the way, for how many coaches one team has paid at the same time?
Cleveland at one point was paying Rob Chudzinski, I believe, for 3 different outings as a Browns coach at the same time.
The Browns around the early
but 3
Haslam
coaches
era
in 3 years is very unusual, and I'm wondering when's the last time that even happened.
There have been,
right, and they're probably still playing Bill O'Brien, so they might be on to their 4th. That'd
be amazing. I'm looking concurrently. I'm like, what is this is the type of stuff that you got Drew behind the glass, all 9'4" of them. Like the research, would they know that with the research group here at NFL Media?
I think they would. I think they have the ability to check that out.
John Madden might know that in a local lavatory, Super Bowl city. I don't know. Who knows? You just got to get the information wherever you can get it. Let's take one more break, and then we'll finish things out. All right, welcome back. Let's see. Other transactions. Dean Pease. Dean Pease. I said Bill Belichick was 73. No, it's Dean who's 73. And he's retiring, the defensive coordinator of the Falcons. He's actually retired 2 other times previously, but he said this time he thinks it's going to stick. He had some health issues this year. Got run over on the sideline a couple weeks ago, but he said that had nothing to do with the decision. He just said it's time to walk away. So Dean Pease, who's been coaching for, I think, 50 years, happy trails to you, good sir.
Defensive coordinator on the 18-1 Patriots, Dean Pease.
Nice.
Also,
he's got that conference championship ring.
They also
he does have a Super Bowl ring.
They mentioned that like 600 times when Dean Pease was squaring off against Tom Brady in Week 18. These guys know each other from their time together, their shared time together in New England.
He weirdly
we get it.
won his Super Bowl with the Ravens, with one of the worst Ravens defenses of all time.
Oh, the Niners year.
Yeah, the year they won the Super Bowl was one of their worst.
Is that
ones.
a credit to him?
40.
It feels like it's
no, but he stuck around and they had a lot of great defense.
Okay,
he had a lot of great defenses
with some adversity.
He was also the Titans defensive coordinator when they ended the Brady Patriots dynasty.
Oh, and
so another
late
Brady
interception
Dean
there.
Pease.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Titans again.
It's a lot of Titans talk.
A cantankerous fool.
Is that what Wes called him?
I believe he loved how
I like my coach have a little cranky spot to him.
He gets agitated during press conferences. I mean, that happened with the Falcons before the season.
I mean that in the best way. Yeah,
That's what I liked about Mike Westhoff, the old special teams coach.
Yeah,
just a cranky old. Oh, he was on our show, and he's cranky with us.
Yes, he was.
One defensive coordinator not going anywhere is Joe Barry. Matt LaFleur, the Packers head coach, said that Barry will return. So there's a little.
Did he also say that Nathaniel Hackett might come back?
Yes.
Leaving the door open for Hackett?
I think, as I understand, he was asked about it, and he's like, "Yeah, we're open to that, and perhaps it will happen, but." That's interesting.
That's
Hackett, of course,
that's
is the
putting
QB
Hackett
coach.
into something that sometimes you just get elevated a little bit too high. It's like, let's just bring you back
Come
to
home.
where you need to be. You'll be fine.
Come back home.
We'll leave the lights on.
Yeah.
Come back home. All right. In other news, so that's kind of like the roundup of all the coaches and what's going on in that realm. A little league news. There was a significant signing extension today. Roquan Smith, who's done very good work with the Ravens since coming over in that trade at midseason from the Bears, agrees to terms on a 5-year, $100 million contract extension. That is a lot of money. $45 million fully guaranteed, $60 million in total guarantees. And for a team that I've told you on this podcast, I'm kind of over. They kind of bore me. Giving a $100 million extension to an off-ball linebacker is on brand. It doesn't get my juices flowing, but it doesn't matter. They're very happy with this man, and he's made their defense better. So good job, bro.
What's on your radar?
They're just kind of boring. The Ravens
But
are
it's
boring.
their offense that's boring, though, right?
Oh, huge signing out of Baltimore. Yeah. Roquan Smith, $100 million.
He changed their defense. We'll get to it Thursday.
But
I think they're a
also-
tough matchup for the Bengals, just the Bengals offense.
They have the
not on
franchise
other side.
tag now if they want to use it on Lamar.
Right, that's huge. And he also served as his own agent and got the biggest
for you.
Money ever.
that cut.
So the agents are sweating this. We do have some more coaching news, though. We have some breaking news.
What?
We
I was
told you
about
it
to
could
say
happen.
that, but Greg,
Oh, no,
Greg
is it Dennis
hogged the
Allen?
breaking news.
Oh, do you want
I didn't
to
know.
give it to Mark?
Yeah.
You don't have to.
Please.
I don't know. Just like I just let you know we have some breaking news here. Let's go. Let's
Well, we
dial
already
it down.
covered that.
Oh.
The audience
We had
knows
already,
that.
we
I
had
want
already had
that,
that
though. I just want
conversation
that.
like a minute
Oh,
before.
I
you
just
only
want
wanted
that.
All right, give it
I
back
just
to
want
Greg
that.
then for the. So,
Greg, you announced what it is. I
Yes.
just want to announce the music.
All right, there you go. See, we came down at a good spot. All right, so
Yeah.
you do. All right, wait.
Let's start
clear.
out. Yeah.
You take the music
We
out.
gotta sage
Okay.
it
Because
again.
he wants
sage the
Mark wants
place.
the bump. He wants the pop
Say
of
the last.
I'm coming
Say
in.
the last line about Roquan Smith. Just close it
Roquan
out.
Smith, what a guy.
We do have, by the way, a little bit of breaking news.
Whoa, Mark! On top of things, as always.
Greg.
The Commanders have fired offensive coordinator Scott Turner.
Young Turner.
Young Turner.
Shoot.
This is how you become
He
not Young Turner anymore.
gone.
This will age you.
Yeah,
He
this
just ran
is
out of
like a
time.
sitting president.
This is another
his
scapegoat
second
move.
Commanders in Washington, D.C., and the Pentagon.
There's less lately.
I know. Well, maybe
They're losing commanders at a rapid pace.
Ron Rivera was talking on Tuesday, so I guess he sort of strategically did this
Need to
right
get Ron
after
Rivera
his
back.
press conference of like how he wanted to be a run-first team. That's how you win in the NFL. You control the time of possession, this and that. And I'm just like, And I'm also thinking, why did they wait till Week 18 to see Sam Howell? That was fun.
Wait, by the way, down the stretch, they were like the most run-heavy team in the entire NFC, and if anything, Young Turner was using all sorts of different players in creative ways in the ground game.
Yeah. Where'd that come from?
Young Turner, son of Norv Turner, deserves better.
Young
he does.
Turner
And
will
I'm
find
sure
his
he'll
way.
get another opportunity out there.
Well, he will. There's
There's a lot of talk, by the
way.
way, about the Nepo babies right now. You're hearing all this Nepo baby stuff going on out there.
Yeah,
and I'm
no, I
not
think
saying his career is indebted fully to that, but I think Scotty Too Hotty will land on his feet.
there are some Nepo babies out there, but it's he also has done some things on his own,
The NFL is rife with nepotism.
It certainly is.
To your point.
Nepo babies all over this joint. Let's see.
What else do we have going
did we have
on?
anything else to add on Roquan, though, by the way? Or did we?
I
hit
think we
Good,
wrapped
good.
it
You
up.
deemed it boring.
Mark came in. I don't think it's boring, and I understand
We hit
how
the
important
salient
it is.
points. We hit the salient
It's
points.
just the Ravens excite me.
I didn't. Greg announced breaking news to break away from Roquan Smith.
Yeah, I felt
didn't-
like the
then I
conversation
came
was
in.
over.
We were
Was
moving
over.
on, Dan.
Yeah. Okay. I was just trying to
Get a feel.
button things up. I can't. You guys are too dynamic. Mike McDaniel said, the Dolphins head coach, that Teddy Bridgewater could have played on Sunday. Okay. Dislocated pinky he suffered in Week 17 against the Pats, but they went with the kid.
Why don't Skylar Thompson, who's now
Skylar
banged
Thompson.
up, I don't think he's saying like he was at his full strength, but it was a pretty good indication to me that Teddy has a strong chance to play this week.
Can I just ask you this though? Like it was a win or die playoff scenario. If there ever was a time to put
Do or die, typically.
Win or die is
Sure,
win
do
or
or
die.
die. I mean,
Honestly.
you could do something poorly and then you do die. But
I
I'm
don't
saying
think
they
if
needed to
there
win.
was any chance and I know we talk up Teddy pretty highly on the show. He hasn't done a lot in recent years, but he would have given them a much better chance, I would think, than Skylar Thompson, who is not ready for this. But
Could he
it
throw
worked
the
out.
ball with a broken finger?
They were playing the right team.
They were
at
saying
the right
in
time.
practice it did not look good for him throwing the ball.
I don't know why you need to say that if you're McDaniel.
Yeah, that's a
basically.
weird
It's just-
comment.
But I like a lot what he says, so I'm not going down that road.
The point
Enjoy
was
him.
more that
Sure.
like he was close
course.
in his mind, and that I think he'll.
Every time I saw
think
him
he's
on the
starting this year.
sideline with the walkie-talkie and the aviators, like I couldn't help but laugh.
He's kinda
like it
funny.
really, I did enjoy that.
He's kind of funny.
He's what we thought. We thought we would get 2 of those. We thought the other would be Nathaniel Hackett, and that turned not fun in about 6.5 minutes into week 1.
Right. I wonder if Hackett will, sit it out a little bit, get back into the hip hop dance
You're
classes.
getting paid like a ton of money.
Yeah.
Why are you? Why
Just go on a
rush
yacht
back
somewhere.
into anywhere?
Yeah.
All right.
Grow a beard. Just
Grow a
vanish.
beard. Hey, the Eagles, your Eagles, Connie, are not playing this upcoming week. So
Right.
I'm not going to dive deep on the Eagles. But I did think it was notable because I wish I would have seen this on Sunday night. We didn't see it and didn't get to it. But here's some sound of Nick Sirianni, talking about Jalen Hurts on Sunday post-game about him, making his way through that Giants game, coming out of it okay, even if he wasn't really okay. This is just something notable I want to get on the record.
We didn't feel like there was more risk, but, I know he was hurting. He was hurting bad, and but that's the kind of competitor that he is. That's the kind of the person that he is, and the kind of teammate and leader that he is, that he was able to go out there and stick and tough through it.
Got it. I know he was hurting, and then he doubles in. He's hurting bad. And I'm just thinking to myself, after 2 weeks, he comes back, and he was clearly less than 100%, got the dub, got the bye. There's just no guarantee, Connie, that he's going to be 100% even after this bye. It's going to help, obviously, but I thought it was notable that he came out and said how badly Hurts was playing in pain during the Giants game.
If he was hurting so bad, why in the world did he drop back 42 times? Like, they have the ability to run the ball and do other things, and they just weren't employing any of those concepts. And they needed to. And obviously they needed to for a couple of different reasons. One, to put away the Giants who were playing their backups, but also to preserve Jalen Hurts here. I didn't like it.
It was strange, and he did not play a great game.
No.
It's worrisome. I agree.
We
Dan.
talked about it on the Power Rankings podcast. That interception in the third quarter was one of the worst decisions I've seen him make all season.
And they played a very conservative game plan to avoid making Jalen Hurts get him in positions where he could take hits. That I get all that, so I don't make too much of the fact that they only had one touchdown. Or all. It's more about
one got called back for a really bad call. An illegal man downfield. Come on.
And he threw an
That was
interception
bad.
on the next play. So if
I wouldn't tell whoever your opponent is. I wouldn't let anyone know that your starting quarterback is hurting anywhere. Mm-hmm. He's fine. He's great. Because let's be real.
Physically, emotionally,
everything's great.
Right.
Keep it inside.
Jalen Hurts.
It's like in hockey.
Keep it buried.
It's a lower body or upper body injury.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Howie, motherfucker.
That's a good one.
Be a good Catholic. Just bury it all inside.
Exactly.
That's how
Nothing's
you
wrong.
do it within
Everything's fine.
that organization, right?
All right. Brandon Cooks wants to be traded. FYI, we knew that over in Houston. Everybody wants out of Houston.
Not shocking.
He doesn't want to be part of a rebuild. Well, you better not be in Houston. And finally, not finally, penultimately, love it, love it. I know this interests people because he's going to always be asked about him. But Zach Wilson spoke to the media and was asked how he'll handle competition, knowing that it's coming to the Jets quarterback room in 2023.
You said you're a competitor, so if they come to you in March and say, look, we're going to keep you, we like you, we're going to develop you, but we're signing veteran X to be our starter, how would you feel?
Yeah, I'm going to make that dude's life hell in practice every day. I'm going to go out there and do my best to just show the coaches that I deserve to be there. And and it's not in a negative way, it's a positive way. It's making everybody else, better, hopefully, and you go out there and you just attack every single day.
Oh, he's just a sweet baby.
What a change.
I don't know.
He looks like
It's
he's younger.
terrible.
He needs a beard. What a change, by the way. That soundbite compared to what things were entering training camp.
It in print versus hearing him say it. It's sometimes like I'm in print. It's like, well, why did you say that? Just don't say that. It sounds inflammatory. But then hearing him say it, it's just like a nice little kid.
You know what it reminds me of, though?
Support.
It reminds me of, like, Tim Tebow joining the Jets saying, like, competition's going to make us all better. I'm going to work and make Mark better.
Iron sharpens iron. The real story that people should pay attention to coming out of Jersey yesterday was that Quinnen Williams, the best player on the Jets, arguably a Pro Bowler and potentially an All-Pro, he said, I'm not going to be heading to voluntary workouts unless I get my new contract. He wants to be the highest paid defensive tackle in the sport, and the Jets do not have a great track record of taking care of their own stars. Get this one right, Joe, or you're going to have a problem with me. All right, it's now time for Moment of the Week presented by NFL All Day. Connie, I'm starting with you, Ms. Wolfe.
This was very easy for me. It goes to the Bills' Nyheim Hines to start the game with the kickoff return for a touchdown.
Obvious much?
I mean, come on. This was like, how could this not be the moment of the week? After everything that happened with Damar Hamlin, the Bills, it just seemed like they were destined to win this game. Nyheim Hines, he comes up huge in two spots, not one, but two kickoffs returned for a touchdown. And the last time the Bills had that, their last kickoff return for a touchdown, 3 years, 3 months ago.
How about that?
All for number 3. I loved it.
And guess what? Josh Allen was choked up after the game after he relayed that message. And think about this, too, Colleen. Now it's going to seem like Gregg and Marc didn't even think of this, which was clearly the moment of the week.
No, I took it off the board for you guys, so it's out of the mix.
It's a little unfair what you've done.
We did a chime in, and she grabbed it right away. But I agree with. I think it's not moment. Week is too small. Moment of the season. But
that's her moment. You can't have it.
All right. Well, I will appreciate what she's done.
How about you?
I mean, I think my moment is, in the long run, like historically, gonna match Nyheim Hines' return touchdown.
Hines time?
That's Davis Mills' 4th and 20 completion for the Texans. If there's a moment that I want to live with for the rest of my life, it's this right here. Mills not only rolling to his right, then he has to go back to his left. He's about to get hit. He throws it up, and the Colts blow it. Their entire.
It's not a good throw.
It reached. It was a pretty good job to get it there in the first place.
Yeah.
The Colts should have certainly knocked it down.
Right.
But I'm going to think about this play for the next 5 years as Bryce Young is not taking snaps for the Texans.
I'm always going to
They would have
remember
had the number 1
where I
overall pick.
was when
I
that
actually will.
Right.
It was one of the only plays all year where I exclaimed loudly in the newsroom, lost all my
You were
professionalism.
emotional. I wasn't there, but I've heard about it. There's going to be oral histories about it. Usually when you throw into quintuple coverage, it doesn't work out. But in that moment,
I'm loyal to football.
That's why it was Gregg's moment of the week. All right, Marc, you're last up, and you're in a lot of trouble because Colleen, duh, and then you had Gregg's, which was really kind of frisky and fun, and now you.
Yeah, I think mine should have been first based on what you're saying. But I love this on Saturday, couched on a day when we weren't here. We were able to watch the Chiefs-Raiders game, and the game out of hand easily. The Chiefs just did their thing, and they started to have so much fun that they just dipped into, these teams, we can't show our trick plays. They just said, we'll come up with a new one. Here's what we got going on right now. Let's hear it.
Out of the timeout, the Chiefs are dancing in a circle in the huddle. That is absolutely unbelievable. The huddle out of the timeout was in a circle, dancing around like they were doing something at a wedding. They were all in unison in a circle looking like a tornado.
I do love that, like, the Raiders were kind of watching that, being like, well, we have to decide where to run and go after this. And the Chiefs must have practiced this so precisely that it's like, if you have a few and you're doing that with your friends on a late at night or perhaps while watching that game.
As one does.
You'd just be dizzy and floating around. How do you do it just at the right amount of time so that you break out of that and go precisely to where they scored on the play? There was a flag. It was Kadarius Toney, who's going to be a weapon for them in an increasing way. But on the next play, Toney scored again. So it's like you can even flag this play, and we'll just score on the next play with the Chiefs.
They call it the snow globe. That's the play.
That's the name of it.
I like Ring Around the Rosie better.
Of course you do, Rosie.
There you go. I like that. All right, great job.
Was that worthy of going third there?
I think so.
It was the bronze medal.
Okay.
So you just judge, but you don't have one?
Because you guys were so excellent that we have to end it there. That is the moment of the week presented by NFL All Day. See ya.